I want to start by talking about dystopias. It's really important to keep what dystopias are in mind right now as we go through COVID-19 because dystopias in particular deal with a systems level breakdown. And that's exactly what's going on right now. We're seeing our systems break down around us because of the pandemic. So in the past, I've gotten a bit of flack for talking about dystopias because they're negative images of the future and nobody really wants to deal with them. People just want to hear about the bright, happy futures, how everything is going to improve, how your organization is going to do better, how we'll all be better off. But unfortunately, it's really important to understand how things can go wrong as well, because that's what helps us understand how to mitigate against those bad scenarios. When we don't acknowledge the bad scenarios and what can go wrong, then we're not really preparing for them in the right sort of way. We're unable to mitigate, we're unable to cope, and we often lack plans that could have otherwise minimized the issue or allowed us to circumvent it altogether. So with that in mind, what I wanted to do was look at various scenarios, consider how the future might play out, not just from the dystopic angle, but going into the more brighter and happier futures as well. Because when you do foresight work and when you do good foresight work, what you want to do is consider a set of multiple alternatives, meaning that the future is more than one thing. The future isn't going to necessarily be one thing for everybody either. So we can see different elements of different scenarios playing out across the world. And once I did that, what I did is I pulled back and I looked at what sort of strategies should we be thinking about. So I want to share two strategies with you today that I think are really important to consider that I haven't really seen anywhere else. So there's lots of good strategies out there right now that include everything from hand washing to stricter border controls, both of which we need, and everything in between that as well. There's also a ton of strategies that would be absolutely wonderful to implement in the long run as we learn from what we're experiencing now and to mitigate another potential pandemic in the future. We want to consider things like climate change in that case because issues like climate change can fuel infectious disease. We know that there's a relationship between disease and rising temperatures, so we want to take that into account. So the first thing I want to see is a tax grace period implemented. So that is for individuals and for small businesses. I don't think corporations need them. Corporations should pay their taxes on time. There's no reason to slow that down, especially since now we know that we can do work remotely and we don't all have to come into the office. So for small businesses and individuals, though, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. We know we've got lots of people on part-time work, lots of people on contract work that are affected by this. And so giving a little bit more leeway, like another 3 months to file taxes, to get those returns in, would be a big help. So I want to see the government institute that. Number two, I want to see lots and lots of knowledge capture. So this includes individuals, but it goes all the way up through communities and organizations up to the government. We should really be capturing everything that's going on as much as possible. I know that's going to seem like less of a priority right now, especially as we deal with pressing issues, but some of us need to be able to take on that role of figuring out what it is that we did, what it is that we did wrong, and what it is that we did right, so that we understand how to deal with crises in the future. So one part of future-proofing ourselves, it's something that we talk about in our field, in foresight, is this idea of preparedness, right? We want to practice the disaster before it happens, and we want to be able to do that not just in emergency management and crises, but we want to do that for the socioeconomic and political levels as well. So if you're an organization or you are in the government or you are involved in systems design, what you want to do is lay out everything that's happening, take observations, record that data, record that information in real time. That allows us to adjust to what we're seeing. If we find that certain things work really well, we can start doing more of that. And if other things don't work as well, we can do less of it. But over time, as that data and information accumulates, it becomes a wealth of knowledge for the entire system to use later. So if we take those two things into account, we'll alleviate some short-term pressure with the tax situation and all of the individual and small business taxes that we are going to have to file quite soon. And we can start to improve our systems over the long run through knowledge capture and through the dissemination of that information at a later date. In the coming weeks, I might share some more information and strategies on how to manage and deal with COVID-19 in a positive way. In the meantime, I wish that all of you are safe and keeping healthy, practicing social distancing, because really it's about containing spread as much as possible. Thanks, and I'll see you in the future.